relations. And part of financial relations, let's be honest, we're talking about things like payments and invoices, but there's more to that. So, quick heads up, we are recording as of now. So be aware of the fact that everything we do in this case will be recorded and will also be set up in the transcript. Transcript in English, so I will make sure we extract it into a Word document and you can feed that to Google Translate if needed. Let me continue here. Let's go to the slide deck. So what are we talking about? It might not surprise you. We have defining concepts. We've got financial settings. Where can you find what information? And we've got a couple of scenarios in this case. And along the way, we are going to do some Q&As. So let's first look at the concepts itself. Where are we in this process? Well, this is, for whatever reason, again, something related to animation. Not sure why this one has animation in this case, but we are here in the billing process. Did we skip provisioning? No, because for provisioning, there's not that much to say. You order, and then the system does its magic. It does its magic by handing information to operations. Operations is going to look who needs to provision this, handing it over maybe to Connect, where Connect hands it over to the vendor. Or if it's an internal service, operations will do the provisioning itself. But that's a piece of magic that is more for an admin training than for an end user training. So that is why we go from payment process to billing process. Billing in the largest sense of the word. What settings, what concepts are related to billing? So this is where we have quite an extensive slide deck. We've got 50 slides, minus 10 for chapters and questions and stuff like that. But let's look at what we're talking about. Defining concepts of the platform. So what concepts are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about some configurations as well as some objects that we have. The first one, I would almost say, already discussed this a little bit when we were talking about payments. You can apply a payment to an invoice, etc., because those are what we call AR documents. AR stands for accounts receivable. In the UI, the name has changed to documents in general. AR is not that obvious for everybody, so we decided to go for documents. We've got credit terms. What is a credit term? What does it do? How can we use it to our advantage? Be aware that we can only use it to our advantage if we have, if we're using actual online payments in the platform. So the moment you're using Claro Invoice, it will probably not work. I will explain later why. We're going to talk about customer classes. What is a customer class? What can I do with it? And why would I want different customer classes? The statement cycle. All concepts that we're going to talk about one after the other. But we start with AR documents. And AR documents, like I said, stands for accounts receivable. And to be honest, why AR documents? All financial activities of vendors and customers result in an accounts receivable document. A payment, an invoice, a credit memo, a refund, a debit memo, those kind of things. So the documents that I just mentioned are showing here. A payment represents the amount of money to be paid or received from the customer. Billing provides different payment methods types, cash, credit card, wire transfer, etc. That payment will eventually be applied, hopefully, to an invoice to clear that invoice. The invoice is that financial document that must be paid by the customer. And of course, where in the process we are depends on whether we generate the invoice first or whether we have the payment first, right? The sales order has the payment first, the billing order has the invoice first. Those invoices are always automatically generated by the system based on the billing model for that service. We will generate an invoice at whatever moment it's needed. So invoice generation is not something you can do manually. We also have a refund or void check. Those are two similar things depending on the type of payment. A void check is what we discussed in the previous module, where I say, hey, I'm not going to check this cash this check because the customer has made an online payment that basically supersedes this check. If it is a credit card, you can, let's say, refund that money into the bank account. And then we've got credit and debit memos for adjusting the customer's balance. He paid too much last month, so let's give him a credit memo for the next month. We looked at his bill and we saw that the customer was not charged enough for his pay-as-you-go scenario, so we give him a debit memo so that he needs to pay more on the next invoice. Those are the steps that we have. And of course, some of these are in favor of the balance of the customer, and some of them are from a customer perspective, I should say, and some of them are making that account negative. And that means that if you look at it from the other side, from the side of the seller, it works exactly the other way. And in this case, we're going to hustle this a little bit around and say, okay, invoice, refund, and debit memo are in favor of the, let's say, seller's balance towards the customer, whereas a payment and a credit memo are bringing down the balance of the seller to the customer. And when you look at those documents from a customer perspective, these things will flip over, because in that case, the positive ones are payment and credit memo, and the negative ones are invoice, refund, and debit memo. This is all about, in this case at least, how we present it here, is about the provider's balance, the provider's or the seller's balance. If a customer pays you for something and you don't deliver, that payment brings down your balance. It's negative. But why? Because he gave you the money and you owe him something. That is what we see here. So the main parameters for AR documents are, again, and this is, of course, a little bit of a repeat of next or of the past module. We have the status of the payment. Is it closed? Is it open? Is it new? The total for that document. Is it a payment of $10 or is it a credit memo of $5? Is it an invoice of $15? And we have the balance. If the balance is zero, what do? We close that document. And in my speaker notes for balance, it says here unpaid amount. I would actually say it's the unused amount, because in an invoice, if you apply a credit memo of half of it, the unpaid amount is $5, which is the balance. But if it's a payment and you put a payment of $50 and you have a balance of 10 and you have an invoice of 10, I have a balance of $40. That's not unpaid because I paid 50, right? It's unused amount. The balance is the unused amount yet. If it's non-zero, that document, of course, also will stay open. So what are we going to do? We're going to look at how an AR document's life cycle works. And in this case, let's look at a payment, an actual payment. Customer buys a product from the marketplace, and he needs to pay $10 for this. And this is a credit card payment. And the moment this payment has been created, it's on hold. Because we first want to do some fraud checking. We're not going to charge somebody's credit card if we can, let's say, with some certainty say this is a fraudulent transaction, right? We want to first make sure that this is a safe transaction. So we have the payment, we create it because we create the payment before we do fraud checking, because we might want to see the credit card number and verify that one. Or we might want to do, let's say, pre-authorization of this amount and see if the credit card company allows for that. So we do create the payment, but we're not charging it the money yet. We don't receive the money yet. So it's on hold. That means that the balance at that point is zero because we didn't receive the money, right? That's a fairly simple amount. We have to receive 10, but we did not receive anything, so balance is zero. The moment the system decides that it's a safe payment, we open the document and we capture the money, meaning we actually extract it from that credit card account into our account. And when we get an okay, we get the status money is captured. Status of the payment itself is open, but status of the payment process is, hey, we've got the money. Now you can start provisioning. Provisioning is happening, and let's hope that provisioning is successful, which 99% of the time it is. So provisioning has happened. The system goes into the billing phase, generates the invoice, applies the invoice to the payment. That means that the payment will now have a balance of zero. And the status that means that the status of that payment goes to closed. That's how the process works. We looked at the workspace already, so I'm not going to go in depth in this demonstration because we've done that in the previous module, not even half an hour ago. So in billing, we've got orders and we've got documents. If you want to find a document for a specific order, you go to orders, open that order, and go to the documents page there. Right? And then you can open it. But you can also do it the other way. If you know for which customer it is, you know the date, you go to documents and open that document straight away there. Two options with the same result. Here we are, we can see what was bought, in this case, cities recurring. Somewhere in 21, this screenshot has been made. Invoice was there, or sorry, the payment was 15. The invoice was 15. So the invoice that we have here now is a closed invoice. One of the things you can do is you can download this invoice as a PDF if you want to, if your system supports PDF generation. Important scenario. And the next thing is a customer class. So what is a customer class? Well, a customer class is a way to group customers. Just like yesterday, just like Monday, we talked about sales categories. In sales categories, you group service plans for display with the same on the same page. A customer class allows you to treat customers the same way in an automated way. What could be reasons for a customer account? creation, for customer class creation? Well, payment method. You can specify size of customers. So we have a couple of options there. We can set a specific credit limit. If you have large accounts that buy more expensive service plans, and of course, since you do Claro invoice at the end of the month, you want them to pay. You don't want them to exceed a certain amount of credit that you give them. A credit limit can be set for those accounts in a different manner than, let's say, the smaller accounts. I can have customers that need a consolidated invoice, so one invoice per month with all their subscriptions on it, whereas other customers just receive an invoice per subscription and they pay it throughout the month. The credit terms itself. Credit terms means, when do I need to pay? How much time do I have to pay? And what happens after that? Auto payment settings, specific payment methods for businesses and individuals. We can say, okay, businesses, we allow to use the Claro invoice payment method, whereas for individuals, consumers, or maybe small businesses as well, we only allow credit card payments, so we have that money straight away. We don't want to run the risk of having them use a service for a month and then disappear or not pay at all. So that's what you can group with a customer class. That means that those customer classes have specific settings. Those settings are here. We can set specific credit terms for the customers. The billing type, do we want a consolidated invoice for those customers? Like, consolidated means one invoice per month with every single subscription and transaction on it? Or do we have different invoices on a per service kind of way? The statement cycle, when do these customers need to pay? Some customers need to pay on the first of the month, so we charge them on the first of the month. Others, we want to be paying on the 15th. That's where the statement cycle comes in. And then the billing type, like I said, per subscription or per account. Per subscription is, I think, pretty clear. Per account means that consolidated scenario. So where do I find it? Well, again, we're talking about money, so we're again in the classic panel for billing. And this is one of the things that you can only set up in the classic panel. So far, I've ignored the UX1. I will do some demos when we're talking about the UX1 control panel when it's applicable. But this part, creating or fine-tuning customer classes with everything surrounding it, is only available in that classic panel. So I'm going to quickly toggle to my browser. And in billing, at the bottom, there is a settings option. And of course, I have to redo that quickly. There is my settings option, and we have my customer classes here. In this case, it's fairly simple. There's only one. I will create one a little bit later, just to show you what can be done. So it's a setting hidden under system settings in the classic panel. And since this is a business choice, this is not something that is forced upon you from the provider. Each reseller can build their own set of settings in this case. Each operating unit, each country in your use case, can create their own customer classes, can create their own settings when it comes to grouping those customers, their statement cycles, billing types, etc., etc. There are more things here. This is where we set the credit terms as well. I will talk about that in a couple of slides. I'm not entirely sure who thought this was a good idea. We have a list of 2, 4, 6, 8 options here. And for finance, they have 3 and more finance settings. And then we get 3 more items. I'm not sure why this was not taken into that first list of options, but this is where I set my statement cycle. So let's go back to the slide deck. I'm coming back to my demonstration in a second. So we have our customer classes there. But before I go create a new customer class, I want to talk about one of the mandatory settings. Let me demonstrate that it's a mandatory setting. Customer classes, add a new one. Here we have credit terms and I have the option for a statement cycle. They have a star, so they're mandatory, but I cannot select anything. Why is that? I cannot select anything because when it comes to credit terms, there's only one.
There is only one. That's what I'm going to answer. Yeah.
Yeah. And for the statement cycle, there's also no choice because there's also only one. So I want to create those first before I create my customer class. That is why I first want to do the rest of the topics and then go back to my demonstration. Here we are. And the first thing we need to set is a credit term. So what is a credit term in the first place? A credit term is a set of periods, or actually a definition, before I continue with the slide. A credit term is how I treat that customer when it comes to payments. And what I mean with that is, how long do I give that customer to pay his invoice on a billing order? And if he doesn't pay within that period, what happens next? And that's actually what I set in a credit term. So the first thing to set is a due period. How long does that customer have to pay his bills? And the key thing there is that last thing after the comma without repercussions on the subscription. Meaning that during that period, if he hasn't paid anything, the subscription works as expected. Subscription can be changed without issues, etc., etc. There is nothing weird happening. There's nothing out of the ordinary for the customer. That changes when we go into a grace period. The grace period is the length of days, the number of days after the due period. So first you have the due and then you have the grace period, during which payments may be made without penalty. The thing is that it has a repercussion on the subscription because during the grace period, the customer cannot make changes to the subscription. So this is still something that where the customer does not, if he just uses the subscription, does not feel or see anything happening. He only sees something happening when he goes into the subscription and says, hey, I need an extra license. And then it says, no can do, you have to pay your bill first. And the third period is a hold period. And this is a definition that is very important to understand what is happening here, because it defines on how long the customer is allowed to have a negative balance. These three are not automatically subsequent periods after each other. These two are. You have a due period, after that comes the grace period. The hold period has a very specific, how do I say that? Has a very specific start and end moment. I'm going to try to explain that in the next slide. Thing is, however, that we have one more setting in the credit term that I need to discuss first. That is the credit hold. What happens if the customer does not pay within those 3 periods? Do we automatically put that customer on hold, yes or no? And the thing is that if we put the customer on hold, all his subscriptions stop. So basically, that means that that customer now is dead in the water. He does not receive any email. He cannot send any emails. The only thing he can do is he can log into his customer control panel and say, I need to pay. That's all there is to it. Nothing more, nothing less. So let's look at how those periods, those 3 periods that I have here, work together. So let's first start with 3 things. We've got an account, we've got a subscription, and we've got a service. And everything is okay at the beginning. At some point, the system sends an invoice. And this is, I would almost say, this is only a story that is about the billing order functionality. So if the customer buys something new, he has to pay anyway from that moment on. He has to select the payment thing. So it will be automatically paid. A billing order, not automatically. So that is why we generate the invoice, because in the billing order, we first generate the invoice and then we handle the payment. On the day that the invoice is generated, the due period starts. So we are talking about the length of time that the customer has to pay his bill without repercussions. So the due period has started, and now something, I would almost say, strange might happen. Let's say this customer gets an invoice on a per subscription basis. He did not pay his first invoice, and 10 days later, he's charged for his second subscription. First subscription is the first one, second subscription is the second invoice we see here. At that point, the hold period starts. The hold period starts counting days, they're all days. And this one defines how long a customer is allowed to have a negative balance. And of course, since there is a secondary invoice open, his balance is now negative because it's negative because of the second invoice. Starts counting. Let's say the customer does not pay. We're still talking about this one, right? He hasn't paid this invoice yet. So after the due period, the grace period starts. If both the grace as well as the hold period have exceeded or have extended, have ended, both, the account will go on credit hold, meaning that subscriptions stop and services are not available anymore. So this is about subscription 1 and subscription 2, 10 days after each other or something like that. Of course, things could also be different. We could also have a situation where this is month 1 and here we have month 2. Depending on the length of due, grace, and hold period, this is also an option. So what is important to realize is that the account always goes on hold when both grace as well as hold period have ended. So is there, I sometimes get questions, is there a way to say after 10 or block an account 30 days after the first invoice has been generated? Well, yes and no. Not if you use all 3 periods. I would say it is possible if you do a due period of 15 days, a grace period of 15 days, and a hold period of 0. Because whenever that hold period stops or starts, it stops right away. And then we're depending on due and grace period. That's 30 days. At that point, they stop. So that is how you can do this. It's not the most, I would say, obvious way of working. I'm not sure if this is the way of working in every bookkeeping system, but this is how we have decided to do it. We're doing this already at least for 15 years when I started doing training on this, delivering training on this product, where this was already there. So after grace and hold have ended, we block the account. So where do you set up this scenario? Where do we set up this hold or this credit term? I will show that in a I already showed that to you, right? It's in the settings option where we have terms and where we have credit terms. I'm going to add one in a second. How does it look when a customer is on credit hold? Well, actually fairly simple. It shows as red credit hold. And when an account is on credit hold, all his subscriptions go on credit hold. I have to make one note on that. This only works for subscriptions or services that we can suspend. If the service itself does not support stop or suspend without throwing away data, we cannot suspend that service, because the alternative would be that we destroy data from the customer, and we don't want to do that. In that case, the service is still available for the customer. So that's that might be a criterion to look at services that you want to start offering. Make sure that this suspension or stopping of a service without destroying the data is available in that service. So he shows us credit term, credit hold. If I click the link or the account name or the account ID, I open it and it shows as credit hold. And if you go one step further, you will, in the financial information section, a little bit down. Come on, a little bit down here. We have it, financial information, on the general tab. You will see why he is on credit hold, because it will show you these three options: which invoice has not been paid, etc., etc., how long it has been paid, etc. So let me create a credit term for you first, before I go to the next slide. I'm going to add a new credit term, and I'm going to name it demo term. As you see, I've got a lot of fantasy on this. And the due period starts, let's say we do 15 days. The grace period, I'm coming back to this setting in a second. The grace period is also 15 days, and let's do a hold period of 20. What do we do with the account when the customer did not pay and it exceeded both grace and hold? Well, if your system handles payment, automatically is a good choice. If your system does not handle the payments, the system does not know if the customer pays. In your scenario, in your case with the Claro invoice, the system will always think that the customer has paid. So in that case, I would say do it manually, or actually it doesn't really matter, because the system will never do it and never show something like this. You have to do it by looking into your payment system and going to Cloud Blue and stop that customer, put him on credit hold manually. But you saw that there are other options here. If a customer pays 9 out of his 10 invoices, but that one invoice he refuses to pay, you can select that he does not pay, or that we stop only that unpaid subscription instead of the 9 that he paid. We can also prevent a customer from going down because he forgot to pay, let's say, his $2 subscription. It's stupid, why would you not? But you can specify what the underpayment limit is. Let's say a customer has 10 subscriptions. 9 of those cost him $100 and 1 costs him $10. And for whatever reason, he forgets to pay that $10 subscription. Well, he still brings in $900. So I don't want to stop him the first time he forgets it. I might not even want to stop him the second time that he forgets that $10 subscription. But at some point, I want to make a statement that, hey, this is fun and this is nice, but now you owe me already $30 because you haven't paid that $10 subscription 3 times. What is the percentage? Let me quickly pull up a new tab. 30 divided by 910. So that's 3%. So if I would say 3% is the underpayment limit, after the 3rd month that he does not pay his $10 subscription, he will go down because now he forgot it 3 times. His underpayment limit is 30 as opposed to the 910 that he's supposed to pay, which is a little bit over 3%. So the next time he goes down. That's what you can use that underpayment limit for. You can also give a customer a credit limit so he can buy without charging his card straight away. And now the most important one is, when do we charge a card? For billing, this is interesting for billing orders, because one of the things you might want to have for your customer is give him the time to make sure his credit card has enough credit on it. So the default setting is I generate an invoice and I charge his card on the same day. The risk you have there is that that card does not have enough credit on it because for whatever reason, pay as you go, etc., he ramped up quite a high cost, more than average. And the payment fails. If the payment fails, the system will not try again because we were able to contact the server, the payment provider, and they told me no can do. That's a different thing than, hey, I cannot reach that payment provider, right? So on invoice issue date is a tricky one. You can also do on invoice due date. That means we send the invoice and 15 days later, this 15, we charge his card, giving him 15 days to clean it up. The downside of that is also there. It simply means that if the payment for whatever reason still fails, might be that another payment came in right before we charge his card and he still cannot pay, we have an issue. So what our advice would be, somewhere between invoice issue date and the due date. And when exactly? Well, so many days before invoice due date. This gives the customer and you time to, let's say, fix the issue if it arises. So let's do 5 days. That means we send an invoice. He has 10 days to get his credit up to speed. And then if the payment fails for whatever reason, he still has 5 days to fix it. So I'm saving this. So now I have 2 credit terms. If I would go to my customer classes and create a new one, you see that I have a pull down menu here. But I also want to show you the statement cycle. So I'm going back to my slide deck. And I'm going to the next slide. Because that next slide says statement cycle. So what is a statement cycle? Statement cycle defines the date of the month by which billing collects the statistics on financial documents issued for a specific group of customers and makes that total statement, meaning invoice. Statement cycle is assigned to a customer through his customer class when that customer account is created. You can select how to define the day of the month when a statement is issued. First, what we can do is we can do a fixed day of the month. Fixed day of the month, come on, there it is, means that we just say the 1st, or everybody is charged the 15th or the 10th or whatever. You can change it later by going into that statement cycle and saying, okay, I want it to be different. And then all customers in that customer class will get a different statement cycle. We can also do what we call a per account date. And what does that do? It places the billing order for that customer on the day of the month when the customer has placed his first order. So customer 1 buys it on the 1st, so his statement cycle will be on the 1st. Another customer buys his first subscription on the 7th, so that customer's statement cycle will be on the 7th of the month. Again, default values can be changed per account later under the account details. You can synchronize renewal order generation with statement cycles as well. The advantage of that means that billing orders will be set for full upcoming month instead of partial months twice to fix that last month. So that's from a product perspective, maybe a relevant thing to think about. Where do I set that statement cycle? Well, this is that hidden setting that is under more financial settings. I click that one and I get to this specific more finance settings menu with the full 3 options that we have there, and it's the top one. In general, there is one, so if you need more, you generate more. So let's do that and create a statement cycle. Going back to system settings, more finance settings, statement cycles, and add a new one. So this is demo cycle. Do we do a fixed day of the month and then we say 1, or we say 10, or we say 3, whatever you want? Or we can do a per account day. The thing is that the UI does not change here, but in this case, the day of the statement will not be relevant. It's the first order day, and it will not be relevant, or the system will, in that case, not look at the day of the statement anymore. So depending on how you want to do that, we see more and more people do this. This is nice if you do credit card payments, because the system will take care of it. You don't have to look at it. You don't have to say, okay, when did we generate that invoice? Did the customer pay already? That's too much manual work. In that case, it's better to use fixed day of the month, where you know when a customer is past his due, when you know when a customer is past graced, etc., etc. Open documents and brought forward is which information is there. Open documents means that older invoices that have not been paid, or older documents that have not been paid will show up on this invoice again. So basically, let's say the customer has a fixed fee subscription of $10. The first invoice says $10. The second invoice, if he didn't pay the first one, will now show $20 because, hey, you still owe us for next month, for last month. That is what open documents does. Brought forward means since last invoice, what has not been paid yet. So that means every time it's $10. And then for aging, for reporting, you can set aging categories. This is has nothing to do with the credit terms. This is aging of invoicing that works in a different way. And then there is the beginning of the financial year. I don't know actually why it's there. It has been added in version 20, but I don't see any report using it yet. It might be that this is for some future use that we already added this setting, but I don't see it used anywhere else. And as you see, it's not mandatory. Well, it's not mandatory because there is a value in it. It's a pull down value. I'm always adding the same numbers here because I would just want to create a cycle. So now I have a statement cycle in there, and I can now create that customer class that I want. So I'm going to add a new customer class, demo class. Owner's default means that if I create a new customer from the marketplace, the customer is placed in this one. I can select which credit term to use, which statement cycle to use. If we use credit cards, we can set a complete notification schedule for that, where we send the customer a notification, hey, your credit card is about to expire. I'm coming to this field in a second. Does this class need a printed statement, meaning that we are actually using the old-fashioned paper mail to send them invoices? Another setting is auto-apply credits, yes or no? And this is that billing type. Do we bill this customer per account, meaning everything in one go at the same day of the month in one invoice? Or do we bill them per subscription whenever that subscription comes in for billing? And then we can set a color. This is just for easy separation between the customers. Let me show you what I mean with that. Here we have that color option, and we see that this shows as a red customer. What does it mean? You can use it, for instance, to notify people troubleshooting or helping customers, your customer support or whatever, that what are important customers and what are less important customers. Let's say a ticket comes in for your most important customer, one that does $1 million a month. You want every support engineer to drop what he's working on and make that customer happy first. So you can classify, let's say, this is red. If a ticket for a red customer comes in, guess what? Drop whatever you're doing and do solve the ticket for that one. Then we've got orange customers. If there are no red customers, you should be working on orange, yellow, green, whatever. So you can classify your customers using those kind of things. I'm going to do a black customer. Even if I do a per account, I can generate, and normally if I do per account and leave the rest open, there is one billing order for the whole account, taking care of every single subscription. Another scenario we can do is we can also generate billing orders per subscription. Generate billing orders per subscription simply means that for each subscription, a billing order is generated and that is added to the invoice so that the customer in his customer control panel can see for each scenario or for each subscription what he has to pay for that subscription and for the other subscription, etc., etc. Might be of interest if a customer needs to bill subscriptions to, let's say, departments or to opcos or whatever. They have one account, they pay one billing, they pay one bill, but internally they need to know what the finance department has spent. They want to know what the IT department has spent. They want to know what the sales department has spent. So they can go into those billing orders and see whatever they used. So this is my new customer class, and I'm going to save it. If I now create a new customer, the first thing I can do is I can assign him a customer class. If you forget about that, you can always, after the fact, here it is, change it. And you see that credit terms and statement cycle are not changeable. Why not? Because they follow the customer class. There we are. So that's a very important one. In this case, the statement cycle setting is the account statement day is the 3rd. I can make exceptions for specific items. Oh, sorry, this one is statement cycle, but they changed that. You could change it before. Let me go back to default. Let's not do strange things. This one is on the first. Another thing, this customer has a credit limit of $0. Where does that come from? From his credit term. Which credit term? The default credit term. What I can do, if this customer, you know that he's good for his money, you can change his credit term and say, hey, you guys, I will allow for a different credit term, a credit limit, and you see that it is customized for the account. So before I go further, what questions do you have? If not, can I get a thumbs? Yeah, tell me.
I have a question. It's maybe a stupid question. I remember that at some point somebody said something about setting auto payment, for some situations. I don't think it moved forward, right? We don't have auto payments, right? By auto payment, I mean automatically, even without an action. Like if I use a certain payment method, this payment is automatically considered as paid.
That is actually what the demo payment method does, and the dummy payment also did. And
yeah, but the dummy payment, you could use it without, it would not be closed. You could keep it pending.
yeah,
I'm saying just as an auto payment, like if I use this payment method, it's paid.
yeah, and that's exactly what the dummy or demo payments do. The key thing that you have to do in that case is you have to mark it as default for that customer. Otherwise, it will always request the
yeah,
customer to do that.
Okay. To select that. Yeah, I know. Okay.
Yeah.
I think I did not explain myself properly, but anyways, okay. Thank you.
Okay. What more questions are there? If not, let me continue. Let's go and look at other financial settings, because there are more settings. What settings do we talk about? Well, these are basically financial settings that are a result of what we just discussed, because we are going to look at the account status. And in general, an account is active. That means that everything is running, customers paying his bills in time, etc., etc. What happens? And now you have to assume that the system is handling credit card payments itself. So it goes and charges the credit card, and this card got declined this month. Customer receives information about that, doesn't act on it, so this invoice stays unpaid. If it stays unpaid for the due period, for the grace period, as well as for the hold period, what happens? We said that account is put on credit hold. Of course, we can also do that manually. But an account goes on credit hold. If the customer now goes in and pays his bill, the system will automatically release him from credit hold. Automatically. In your case, this is a manual action because Claro Invoice handles the payments externally. The Cloud Blue system always thinks that invoices are paid because of that dummy payment that we're doing. So in your case, this is a manual action as well. Another type of hold is administrative hold. That's always a manual action. So when would you use that? First of all, I want to use that if I don't want the customer to quickly pay and get things up and running again. I have to penalize him because, hey, this is the 5th time that this customer goes on credit hold. in a subsequent 5 months. So he's a bad payer. Let him be offline for 5 days. So I put him next to credit hold. I put him on administrative hold as well. He goes in, he pays, he's released from credit hold, but he's still on administrative hold. I can only release him from administrative hold by hand. So this is always a manual action. And of course, we can close the circle here. So in the case that the customer does not pay for the 5th time around, I'm going to put him manually on hold as well. Meaning that if he pays his bill, he is indeed released from credit hold. But the thing is that he's still on administrative hold. He has to call me for him to be released from administrative hold. Because I want to tell him that this is the last time we do this. Otherwise, we will cancel his account. Because we don't want this to happen on a monthly basis, that he goes on credit hold, he refuses to pay, and then he quickly pays his bill, and then he's released again. We don't have due and grace periods for nothing, right? That's the whole idea. And you can go full circle. I can do this, or I can go the other way around if I want to. That's up to you. Manually or automatic. So how does that look? Well, you do that in the properties screen of the account. I can see 2 buttons here, put on hold or put on credit hold. I'm going to put this one on credit hold first. Why did I do that? The system will make a note of it. If the system does this, I have to put it in account overdue, too long not paid. And I need to put in a note in this one. So I put him on credit hold. So now this customer shows as credit hold. I can, like I said, let me go back to my slides quickly. Let's get rid. So we did this. We are here now. But I want to put this guy on administrative hold as well. You see, nothing's needed, no comment. It's fast. This we do it this way because this might be a reason. There might be a reason to do this very quickly. Let's say the police shows up with a warrant for data of this customer. He's suspected of all kinds of bad things on his website that he rents with you, and the police wants to have the proof. You don't want to have to type in all kinds of reasons. You just want to block his account so that he cannot delete that evidence. That's why it's there. The system shows this account as credit plus administrative hold, meaning we are now there. Whether or not this customer pays, this could even be 2 departments. We see that our finance department sees that this customer paid, so we're going to release him from credit hold. I'm clicking this, but he's still on administrative hold. So now we're here. Still, all his subscriptions are down. And then, of course, after that whole lawsuit is over, police comes in and says, you can clear his account again. So we release him from hold. So now we are back to active. So what can we see about this? We have an account status history tab. We see who did what with all comments needed and the statuses along the way. I can do it the other way around as well. Interesting, but not very relevant. There's one thing that I want to do. I want to put him on credit hold again. Account overdue, let's put in some comment. So I don't want to show this. I want to show the release from credit hold. Let's say the customer calls and says, hey, I transferred the money through bank transfer or through phone transfer into your account, but it takes 2 days to reach your account. Can you please release my account? I can say, okay, yeah, that's good. I'm going to do that for 2 days. So that means that the system is now releasing this account for 2 days. And if the system does not see that the payment has come in, he will block the account again. So that is what we can do. Release from temporary hold. It tells me that it has been temporarily released from credit hold. In the account status history, it will tell me as such with the comment that I have. So this is how you can also give your customer some time to fix it. So what happens if an account is on hold? What hold doesn't matter. This is on hold. Credit hold, administrative hold does not really matter. What happens? All these services items will be somehow, well, not all, sorry. Most of this will be in an interesting status. Credit and administrative hold is what the subscription show as well as the accounts. So credit and administrative hold and or, right, these three options I will see at account level in my list here in the account status. The subscriptions, I will see that same thing in here. Services that are, and that's a key thing, services that are suspendable. Like I said, this is about whether the service supports it or not, will be stopped. So, for instance, a customer will lose access to his Office 365 subscriptions. We won't destroy the data there, but he cannot log into it anymore. Any domain that he registered with the platform will be disabled. So there is no name resolution anymore, which, by the way, also means that if that customer has Office 365 for mail using his own domain, there will not be any resolution of MX records. So mail will fail. The customer cannot create new orders. The only two things that are still available is a user can log in to his customer control panel and to UX1, and end users are able to log into what we call the MyCP, the My Control Panel. Why is that? Because these users might need to see what is happening. And why is access to the UX1 still allowed? Fairly simple. The customer might need that UX1 to go in and say, hey, I want to pay this invoice with my credit card. So if we don't give him access to UX1, he cannot pay his bill that is outstanding. So that is why these two are still available. So what questions do you have on this part? If none, super, thank you. I see some thumbs up. That means that we have some scenarios here. Let me go to my deck. A couple of those scenarios that I demonstrated is on credit hold and there's a payment on the way. Customer send us a check, or customer did a bank transfer, but it takes a couple of days. So what are we doing? We can temporarily release the account from credit hold. Of course, you have to make sure that the payment comes in afterwards. Otherwise, the system will go down again. Let's say we gave him 2 days, the payment comes in tomorrow, and it's an external payment. I have to make sure that I tell the system, the Cloud Blue system, that we receive the money now. An account on hold. A sales order remains unprocessed and it's in the hold status. That is that thing that we just discussed. If a customer is on hold, he cannot place any new orders. So depending on the investigation I did, I now concluded that this customer is on hold because of a payment issue. So he did not pay his invoices, overdue invoices. We tell him, okay, now you have to go in and pay your overdue invoices. Otherwise, everything goes down. Delayed service provisioning. This is a tricky one, but it happens every once in a while. Let's say Microsoft fails in provisioning on the same day, so it takes 2 or 3 days. The thing is that we don't have to do a refund anymore. In version 21, and as far as I know, in version 20.5 as well, sales orders will be fixing that scenario. So the sales order will now, let's say, start the subscription on the day of actual service provisioning. So let's say the customer placed that order 3 days ago on the 17th, and only today that service is provisioned. That means that the customer paid from today, not from the 17th. So we don't need to do that anymore. In older versions, in 20.1, 8 point whatever, we still had to do that. We had to say, okay, you paid from the day of the sales order and you did not get the service, so I had to give him a refund for 3 days. We changed that. We start the subscription date on not on the sales order day, but on the service provisioning day, which means that if the customer paid for a month, he paid from the 20th forward. Auto apply credit. We discussed that as well. In the customer class, you have that auto apply credit checkbox. Make sure it's in there, and that means that a new invoice will automatically apply a credit document before it handles the payment. And Ana Paula, I'm not sure if this is what you were talking about. Auto payments.
Yep. Yep. Yes, sir. That's what I was talking about.
Okay. Yeah. Allowed payment methods. It's a little bit of a tricky one because it still requires for auto payments. It still requires that the payment method at hand or that needs to be used is set as the default payment method, but I can limit which payment methods are available to a customer class. If nothing is mentioned, everything goes. If there is something mentioned in that customer class list, and let me go to my new customer class that I created and show you that customer classes, demo class. Here is an allowed payment methods. Nothing is there, means everything is available. If I say add allowed payment methods and check this box, only this one, it means that everybody in this customer class can only use Claro Invoice as a payment method. And when you use this one as the only one, it will automatically also be the auto payment option. Would that answer your question, Ana Paula?
Yes.
Great, great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then provisioning before payment. I want to provide services to customers before the actual payment. What do I do? Well, there are 2 ways of doing it, to be honest. The first one could be after billing period. So that's a postpaid subscription. That's fairly simple. The second, or actually three ways of doing that. We set consolidated invoicing for every not first option that the customer buys. He can just automatically, it will automatically be provisioned, and it will only be charged to the customer on his billing day. And the third option is I'm going to give him a credit limit to purchase things for. And that credit limit is non-zero. That is that thing that I demonstrated with, I think, Alex Mann. Here we have it. This guy can now purchase and wait till the next billing cycle before he needs to start paying. Those are a couple of options that you have to do provisioning before the customer has to make dedicated payments. So what questions do you have so far? If not, please give me a thumbs up. Thank you. Okay, that's the end of this module. It is 47 now. Let's be back at the top of the hour. So at 00, let's reconvene at that point. I'm going to stop the recording so we generate a new one.